Welcome, everyone. Tonight is Thursday, October 23rd. This is a Planning and Zoning Commission Zoning Regulation Update Subcommittee meeting and presentation to the public. Just as a quick introduction here, this particular subcommittee has been working with BFJ, our planners that we hired to do the zoning overhaul. It's been about 3 months or so that we've been at this, and they've been diligently putting together the initial package of information, observations, and studies on our current zoning code and potential recommendations that will come down the line. This is the first of a series of hearings and meetings we'll be having. By no means is this the last. We're here to present to the public, or BFJ is here to present to the public, the current draft that they're working on, the intent and schedule of what we'll be doing and how it will roll out over the next 12 months. The goal being by sometime early fall next year, we'll have a completed revised zoning regulation that we will be able to act on and vote on and put into practice. The goal has always been to make the zoning code stronger, cleaner. The last overhaul was in 2007, and since then there's been innumerable updates and text amendments and modifications that helped, but it's time for I won't say a clean slate, but it's time for an overhaul. So with that, I'll introduce the team here at BFJ. If you want to take the mic and let us know your team members.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. My name is Frank Fish. I'm a principal of BFJ. You're going to hear from 3 of us tonight, and Susan Goldberg will be the second speaker, and then Emily Tolbert will be the third speaker. There's 3 of us key people in our office working on it. There's some others working on it, but the 3 key people be here tonight doing the presentation. So I'm just going to, we hope that to do this in about a half an hour or so, if I can get this working. There we go. Oh, geez.
Oh, yeah, press it down button.
Yeah, right. So what we hope to do tonight for the agenda, just the presentation, is to just give a sort of introduction to what we've been asked to do, what the update means, and then go through a little bit what we call a zoning primer. And that is, some of you may be very familiar with the details of zoning, but some of you may not. So we're going to try to go over just a little bit about the zoning. And then the project overview, what we've been asked to do. This is the first sort of workshop, so you're not going to see recommendations here. We want to really get your input. But after that, we want to go through the existing regulations, some of what we've heard so far, test that ideas with you, and then take a break, maybe a 10-minute break. They've got actually someone's made homemade brownies out here, so and there's other things out there,
gluten-free.
So
free, please have some.
Yeah, we'll take a break, and I'll get at the end here, I'll describe what we want to do after the break and how that might work. We really want your public comments, and so we'll have like a sort of New England Town Hall Q&A. So that's the overall sort of hope. And then I just wanted to make sure that we call it a zoning review update subcommittee that's just been described to you, but here are the members of it. You've got a 6-member team here with Dan Radman chairing it. We've been working day to day with Sarah, your town planner, and then you've got our 3 names there. You can see. I think I've just introduced the team, so that's the basic team. So what's the purpose? There's an obvious purpose here. One, we've been asked to look at the zoning code, your zoning regulations, and update them. And the guide to updating them is going to be both our committee, but also comments we receive and examinations, obviously, that we make and then report back to the committee. So we're going to also, this second dot point is really important. You went through a whole plan of conservation and development. So you've got a very recent plan. And in that plan, there are many recommendations for zoning. And in Connecticut, as other states, your zoning is supposed to be based on a quote, well-reasoned, unquote, plan. So you've got one. You've got a good, well, we think it's a decent plan. And so we are looking at that plan and what it says for your goals in the plan. And then this effort will be to try to guide new development according to those goals, and that's consistent with those goals, and then make the zoning regulations up to date, if you will. Some of them, some parts of your code are a little bit old, and also to try to get the code as user-friendly as we can, as we can do. So with that, I'm going to turn it over now just to go over the basics, some of the basics of the zoning to Suzanne Goldberg.
Thanks, Frank, and thank you everyone for being here tonight. So we know that zoning can often be something that's highly technical, not something people deal with on their day-to-day life, even though it affects the day-to-day life of all residents. So we just wanted to take a moment in the beginning of the presentation to explain what is zoning, why are we here, and really how it works. So as I mentioned, what is zoning? This might be a refresher for some of you, but just so we lay the foundation for tonight's information session, zoning divides land into districts that determine what uses are allowed. And those uses can be either permitted, they can be allowed for any law in that district, or they can also be allowed if the property owner seeks out a special permit. And examples of uses are things like residential, commercial, industrial. In addition to the use, zoning also sets the form of what can be built. So that means the building height, the size, the setbacks, which we'll touch on a little bit later. But setbacks are essentially how far a building can be built from the lot line, and lot area, so the total lot size in that district. What is not zoning? So this is also important to understand. Zoning is not building codes, so it doesn't cover things like construction, structures, mechanical systems. It's also not a development plan. So it regulates land use overall, but it doesn't dictate a specific project. It doesn't decide on a specific development. It's land use as a whole. And also another element of, why we're here tonight, why do we need zoning? So the purpose of zoning is to promote the health, safety, and general welfare of the public. As Frank mentioned before, zoning should also support community goals, and those are things that have been expressed in your 2024 POCD, things like sustainability, preservation of open space, housing, economic vitality, vibrant downtown, overall quality of life. And the other key element here that we want to emphasize is that zoning provides predictability and consistency of development. So that means you can predict where the size, location, and density will be. And consistency also means that what gets built fits into the context of its surroundings. And our job is to help you all and help the committee minimize the number of exceptions to this rule so that the code can really predict the built form rather than having to make an exception on one-off cases. So a little bit about the project itself. Frank touched on this before, but so we can set the scene a little bit, the legal framework of zoning. So under Connecticut general statutes, the Planning and Zoning Commission, which is the members that sit up here, is the legislative body that is authorized to establish and change zoning regulations. And as Frank mentioned, another element of the law is that zoning regulations must be consistent with the town's plan of conservation and development. So just to shed a little bit more light on how we get from the plan of conservation development, the POCD process, to the final adopted zoning code. This is an overall flow chart of the process. So the POCD, this part has already been finished, but this is where we're starting from. We're not starting from scratch. We're building off the work that you all already did. So there was community engagement for the POCD creation. The vision and goals were informed by the community input. That also included values and goals. The POCD was adopted in 2024. And now we're moving into the second phase of draft changes by the Zoning Regulation Update Subcommittee, which Frank mentioned in the beginning. So the planners, which is us at BFJ Planning and some other members of our team, are working with the subcommittee to draft updates to the zoning code based on those goals and visions that were expressed in the POCD. We're giving opportunities for the community to give feedback on those draft changes as it comes along. And then the subcommittee will ultimately decide, given the feedback and given our work with the planning team, which zoning updates are going to advance onto potential adoption. Then we move into the next phase, which is finalizing the changes to the zoning regulations. So this involves a referral to the Planning and Zoning Commission. As I mentioned before, they're the legislative body that can change, adopt, update the zoning code. There will be public hearings, at least one, to have public feedback on the final zoning changes and incorporate any of that public feedback. Then we're going to take what we hear at those public hearings and the subsequent public workshop, incorporate it into the zoning code, make final edits, and the Planning and Zoning Commission is going to vote on those final updates. And to get a little more specific on the timing of all of this, I think Dan mentioned this at the beginning, but this is approximately a year-long, 13-month process. And we split up the timeline into 4 key phases. So the first phase at the top is the green bar. You might not be able to read it on your screen, but this is all going to be posted on the project website, which we'll get to in a minute. The first phase in the green bar is the review of existing regulations. So that involves reviewing the POCD as well as the existing zoning regulations, the document itself. We've been meeting with the subcommittee regularly to inform them of the existing conditions analysis. And we're meeting with you all tonight. That's the first yellow circle. That's the first public workshop in October. So as we finish up this phase in October, we're keeping public engagement consistent throughout. So that's that yellow bar, which you can really see follows the entire process. In the yellow bar under public engagement, in addition to the public workshops, we also are holding stakeholder interviews. So the point is really to meet with people who are everyday users of the code, people like the town engineer, the town attorney. We're holding a focus group with practitioners that are used to using the code often in the town. And the idea is to really get as much feedback from those people that are everyday users of the code on what is making it difficult to use, what they see as areas for improvement, what's working well. We're also going to host an online survey at the beginning of 2026. This is going to be a couple months long. It'll be another opportunity for people who can't make it to public workshops or other people in the community, business owners, residents, to give additional feedback on the zoning updates. There's going to be another public workshop next spring. And then the public hearing, we're estimating for the beginning of June. Our goal is to really have the public hearing, the first public hearing at least before school gets out. That way, we don't want to hold this over the summer when people leave. We want to make sure everyone who wants to participate has the option to at multiple points throughout this process. Phase 3, which we're going to move into next, is really the meat of the process, which is drafting the zoning text and map revisions. And as we work through these text and map revisions, we're going to be meeting consistently with the Zoning Regulation Update Subcommittee. We're also going to be meeting with the Planning and Zoning Commission as a whole to update them on our progress. As these preliminary text and map recommendations come along, they're going to be posted on the town's website. That way you all and anyone else who would like to can leave feedback and really track the progress as we go. The fourth phase, which will continue next spring or begin next spring, is finalizing those zoning text and map revisions based on public input, based on our meetings with the subcommittee and other stakeholders, and then ultimately the public hearing or hearings revisions based on the final public input and adoption by the Planning and Zoning Commission. So now that we got through the introduction, the what is zoning, why are we here tonight, and what the rest of the process is going to look like, I'm going to pass it over to Emily to talk about some of the work we've done so far on New Canaan zoning regulations.
Thanks, Suzanne. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Tolbert. I'm a planner at BFJ Planning. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about your zoning regulations and what we've heard so far about what are some of the things that we might be considering changing. So first of all, I wanted to point out that your zoning is comprised of both a text and a map. And so we have both the text and the map printed out in the hallway so that you can all peruse through it and see what's in there during the break. And these documents are also available on the town's website. So the text describes what you are actually allowed to do in these different zones, and it also provides basic standards for things like landscaping and parking, while the zoning map shows where those actual zones are applied. It shows the lot lines so that property owners can clearly understand which zone their property is in and which of the regulations that are in the text apply to their properties. So within that zoning text, we just did an overview of the table of contents here just to give you a little bit more insight in what's included in there. So you have several articles. One of them is the definitions that provides definitions for the terminology that's used within the zoning code. You also have descriptions of residence zones, of business zones, of special zones. You have a section on basic standards, which is things like signage and parking and landscaping requirements that apply to several different zones. You also have special revisions, which covers things like affordable housing and non-conforming lots, for example. And then you also have the procedures, which guides what the commission does, what the Zoning Board of Appeals does, and the ways that the zoning is actually enforced. So some of these sections have been updated over the years. The last comprehensive update was in 2007, so it's been a while since the text has been looked at holistically. There have been some changes in the past 15 years, but those are kind of here and there. And some of the sections have remained unchanged for decades, so we will point out some of those tonight as well. So getting a little bit deeper into your regulations, New Canaan has 7 different residence zones. These generally are differentiated by the lot sizes. So in the B residence zone, for example, that's your smallest minimum lot size zone. So their lots can be a minimum of 7,500 square feet. And then you have zones going all the way up to 4-acre residential zones. You also have 6 business zones in New Canaan. These are generally around your downtown area or entirely around your downtown area. And these are differentiated by some of the similar things like the bulk requirements or the setbacks and so forth, but also distinguished by the uses that are allowed in those zones. And they also have different parking requirements, for example. So retail A is kind of your compact downtown business center that has lots of retail and restaurants and personal service uses, whereas a district like business C is really dedicated to office buildings. So those are the types of things that distinguish these zones. And then you also have some special zones in your town. There's about 10 of them. So some of them, like the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Zone, have a specific purpose for protecting, your open spaces, while some of these other zones are related to different types of residential development. So for example, you have your multifamily zone, your apartment zone, and then zones that have been created for some of your other housing developments like the Millport Housing Zone. So when we were brought into this project, the town had created an RFP, and in the RFP, they had set out the following objectives for this zoning regulation update. So I'm just going to read through these. I know that you can't all see them on the screen, and I'll provide some examples along the way. So the first one is to remove or change existing zoning regulations that are inconsistent with the state of Connecticut general statutes and case law. So as Suzanne and Frank alluded to before, the zoning should be in line with your POCD, Plan of Conservation and Development, but Section 8.2 of the general statutes also provides other requirements about what zoning in municipalities can and cannot do. So we are checking through recent public acts that may have changed the Connecticut state statutes to make sure that your regulations are consistent with the law. So for example, a recent public act changed how outdoor dining is treated, and New Canaan's regulations need to be updated to be consistent with the state law. The second one is to clarify inconsistencies, any unclear language, and outdated requirements that are contained in the existing zoning regulations. So for example, we're going to be reviewing the definitions that you have in the code. There are some definitions that are defined, but then they're not used throughout the code, and they have just been carried along over the decades. So for example, you have a definition of fur-bearing animals in your zoning code, but that doesn't appear in any of the zoning regulations. So that's an easy fix. And then there's others that just need to be modernized. So for example, one we've talked about is game courts. Game courts have become a popular thing to have since the pandemic, and new sports have come out, such as pickleball. So that might require different types of regulations, and we want to make sure that that definition is clear and encompassing for all those types of things that might fall under a game court definition. Number 3 is reviewing and updating what requires commission approval, so site plans and special permits, to streamline the permitting process. So this is meant to make it easier for the commission, but it's also meant to make it easier for residents and for small businesses who are coming forward and have something that they want to do with their property. So for example, if you have a smaller accessory use that somebody wants to build on their residential lot, that might be better handled by the planning and zoning staff rather than having to take up the time of the planning and zoning commission, and then therefore allowing the planning and zoning commission more time to deal with larger, more complex projects. Number 4 is strengthening and changing the current special permit criteria. So the special permit criteria is one of those things that hasn't been touched in decades. So the special permit criteria that you currently have hasn't been edited since 1959. So that may be okay, but we want to make sure that we review that to make sure it's doing what it needs to do effectively. So for example, right now, very different types of special permits have the same type of criteria. So for example, if someone wanted to put a 1,200 square foot accessory structure on their lot, or open a new school on their lot in a residential zone, it's the same criteria. So that's something that we want to look at and make sure is, meeting the needs of the different types of uses that are appropriate in the town and appropriate locations. Number 5 is evaluating all applicable action steps recommended in the 2024 Plan of Conservation and Development for potential incorporation into the zoning regulations. So again, the Plan of Conservation and Development is on your town's website, so you can take a closer look at what those action steps are in there. But a few examples are identifying methods to improve the physical appearance of the downtown, evaluating the town's existing inclusionary zoning regulations, and better protecting existing steep slopes during the development process. So those are just a few examples of the recommendations from the plan that are related to zoning. Okay, so number 6 is evaluating whether residential setbacks, heights, and coverage are leading to the desired development patterns. So the town did significantly alter the allowable building coverage in a 2005 update. And many of the lots were given additional allowances for how much building could cover the ground on their lot. And so we want to know, are residents happy with this change? Are people happy with the scale of new construction that they're seeing in their existing neighborhoods or not? So that's something that you might like to comment on. Number 7 is to evaluate all aspects of the business zone regulations to ensure that desired outcomes are achieved. So one thing that we're looking at is updating the permitted uses here. A lot of the uses that are listed under the allowed uses are maybe outdated, or the definitions need to be modified. Some examples we came across are green grocers and high technology incubator businesses. We also want to review the dimensional standards to make sure that any redevelopment that occurs in those business zones in your downtown is in keeping with the existing structures and character that you have in your downtown. Okay, so the next one, number 8, is evaluating how the zoning regulations manage non-conforming lots, structures, and densities. So again, non-conforming is referring to things that don't fit into what the zoning regulations say they should do. And those are typically things that were existing before the zoning regulations were created. And so what we want to look at there is we want to make sure that the regulations that New Canaan has are consistent with the state statutes. And also we want to make sure that we know where those non-conforming lots and structures are in the town, and to make sure that the property owners there are being treated fairly. Number 9 is evaluating how the zoning regulations manage institutional uses, affordable housing, and multifamily apartment zones. So for institutional uses, right now you have kind of different zones for different institutions, and the commission is wondering if there's a better zoning strategy that can manage those uses and make sure that when they seek to evolve in the future, either expand or change their structures, that these needs are balanced with the needs of the residents who live nearby those institutions. In terms of affordable housing, one of the things we're looking at is your inclusionary zoning policy, and we want to evaluate if anything needs to be tweaked there. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that on a coming slide. And then also your multifamily and apartment zones. So we want to look at these standards to see if these need to be updated. For example, the apartment zone has been in existence since the 1940s, and it's undergone 4 different alterations. And in each of those iterations, the allowable density has been reduced and reduced and reduced. And now the result is that the only thing that can be built in the apartment zone is essentially single family houses, or the only thing that is getting built is detached single family homes. So we want to look at the intent of that zone and the effectiveness. And number 10 is updating the zoning map where applicable. So as we're going through these things, we might identify areas of the map that would be changed. But really, when we're talking about changing the zoning map, we're not talking about changing the delineation of the 4-acre residential zone or the 3rd-acre residential zone. We're really talking about the business zones in the downtown, and more specifically about the potential to consolidate some of those business zones. Okay, so some of the things that we've been talking about so far in our conversations with the zoning regulation update subcommittee and with the town staff and in preliminary stakeholder meetings that we've had. One of them for residential zones is considering options for 2-family homes in the B residence area. So your B residence area is located around the commercial downtown. It's generally the residential zone with the smaller lot sizes. But it's also very importantly in the Seward area, or generally is within the Seward area. It's near downtown amenities. It's nearer to the train station, and there actually are several existing 2-family homes in this district. Currently, they are allowed by special permit. We also want to study what requires special permits for things like accessory uses. So pool houses, courts, batting cages, those are accessory uses on residential properties. The town has seen an increase in these types of uses since COVID. So for the planning staff and the commission, they need more guidance on how those should be regulated. And also consider creating intentional and uniform standards for the various institutional uses to avoid one-off text amendments. So right now, the town is having to go through a process to change the zoning regulations to allow these institutional uses to do different things, and they want to find a more streamlined way to take care of that. In business zones, as we've already noted on the previous slide, the commission and staff are interested in streamlining the commission permitting processes. So an example that we're talking about in the downtown business zones is many of the applications that are coming to the Planning and Zoning Commission are for a change of use in small businesses. And that's something that potentially could be handled by the zoning staff rather than having to come to the commission. And as I mentioned previously, we're also thinking about combining some of those business zones. So right now you have 6 different commercial zones in the downtown, and that's on approximately 75 acres of land, or about 1% of the town's land. You have 6 different zones regulating those uses and development. So we just want to study whether those could be consolidated or simplified. And then in terms of special zones and overlays, the things that we're really talking about here. So for example, the Aquifer Protection Overlay Zone, it's a long story of how that got put into the zoning regulations, but it's really not relevant for the town of New Canaan. So that's a zone that we are looking at eliminating. And then the Millport Housing Zone and Canaan Parish Housing Zone, these are both zones that were created for independent residential developments that share the names of those zones. And so we're looking at creating some kind of more general affordable housing or housing multifamily apartment overlay zone that can encompass those. We also want to reassess the inclusionary zoning effectiveness. Just for those of you who aren't planners and might not hear the words inclusionary zoning all the time, what New Canaan's inclusionary zoning policy is when a developer of a multifamily development comes in and they want to build something that has 5 or more units in it, they are required to set aside 15% of those units as affordable housing. And so far, there's been a few applications under this policy. So the town wants to assess how we might make some tweaks to that to make it more attractive to developers and to help New Canaan achieve its goals for providing affordable housing. And then in regards to basic standards, some of the things we've been talking about are implementing impervious surface limits. So that's limiting things like paved driveways on properties and or looking at a green space minimum. So that would be requiring a certain amount of area that's, grass or some kind of surface that can absorb excess stormwater. And the purpose of that is really just that, absorbing the excess stormwater and making sure that flooding isn't impacting these areas. And then assessing things like signage, landscaping, lighting, and parking standards. All right, so I'm going to pass this back to Frank. Thank you.
I know that was probably a lot to digest. So we're into a little bit of detail, but what we're not into yet is any recommendations, but we've heard a lot, as you can probably tell. And so the key to this rest of this meeting to us is after the break is I want to just discuss the role of public input for a minute. And this is part of it. You're a key part. So, sorry. Did that one a little bit too.
Oh, here, yeah. I skipped one slide.
Yeah.
Go down.
Right. There we go. Okay.
Oh, wait, it's going
So-
from the beginning.
One more.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sorry, everyone.
It's very sensitive. So, just in terms of input and engagement, we want to, as you can see here, share questions and comments tonight from you, just to get a flavor of what issues you see, and this will all be after the break. And then again, as was mentioned, everything we do will be put up online. And if you have questions that you don't, or your neighbors have questions, you can email questions, ideas to Sarah as your town planner, and you can see listed here. She's been willing to give her email, so you can email her on any questions.
Yes, I have business cards if anyone needs
Great.
my email.
Okay. And then the project website, we're going to try through Sarah to keep updating that. So as we develop some draft ideas with our committee, after they've reviewed something, we'll send that or make changes in it to Sarah, and then that'll be put up on the website. So what we're hoping for in that process is that you don't get, or you'll have the opportunity to track the whole project, so that when we get to the public hearing, and this always happens to us, but when you get to the public hearing, we don't have someone who gets up and says, gee, I never heard of this. I just heard of it in the paper, and I haven't had a chance to have any input. So we're trying over time to, as we develop work, committee reviews it, it can go up on the website so that you all see it. And then hopefully in the second workshop, for instance, you'll have that'll be an interactive workshop, we hope, with probably, roundtable discussions, that type of thing. So by the second workshop, we can get more input from you because you will have seen more of the work that's up there. So then in addition to that, based on comments tonight and other comments we get from the committee, we're going to try to do an online survey on the zoning. What works, what doesn't work, what do you feel? We're going to try to do that in the period January to March, early next year. And we hope to have the results of that so that you can see it in the public workshop. We always find it helps us to also publicize those. So that's just some of the public engagement we're hoping for. So after the break or during the break, if you want to speak, just to talk about tonight a little bit, we've got a comment box that's out there we'll put up if you want to just make comments in writing. But also, if you'd like to speak, just if you could sign in on the sign up sheets out there, just so we have a record, Sarah has a record. And then I think most of the time, or I found anyway, when I make comments, I can be within 3 minutes reasonably. There's I think 15 of us or so. I think it won't be a problem. We'll want to hear everybody and your comments. Again, as was mentioned earlier, there's for you outside. There's what we've made copies of the zoning code. The whole code is on each table out there, and then there's a whole map, so you see what it is. And then there's the comment box out there. So, and also there's tea and there's cookies and there's brownies. So we're on time. We wanted to be finished with this by 7:45 so that we could take a break and then take 5 or 10 minutes and then as we'll reconvene in here, and then we'll take questions, comments. So thank you. Good.
Let's dive back in.
I think we're ready, and there's someone who has signed up, I believe, to start off. Just right there. Yeah, you can just sit right there, and the mic's on, and right ahead.
All right, for the record, Rob Frangione, 15 Snowberry Lane, licensed professional engineer in Connecticut, kind of representing myself as a private citizen, not necessarily professionally here. I was around when the 2007 zoning regs were done, when they were crafted, and I remember that whole process. I just want to make sure that with these, whatever we come up with, we don't have a series of haves and have-nots. And a lot of the things that I'll talk about might actually cost me jobs. So, I'm trying to do less work. Don't make a situation where a house or an amenity that was built last year couldn't be built this year. This happened in Greenwich when they changed their regulations to include floor area ratio in 2 and 4 acre zones. Same thing happened again when they introduced green area, which is just the inverse of coverage. Same thing happened with steep slope regulations in towns like Mamaroneck. Properties that were almost as of right the year before, these new regulations come in, and now they're getting shot down. They're just not able to do them. I'd also advise against introducing total impervious limits. The town has a drainage policy and drainage laws. They already address this. At some point, you have to give people the freedom to do what they like. I know some people just come in and they complain about, oh my God, I'm getting all this water on my property. Climate change is real. It's happening. I think the way to address that, there are methods of addressing that, but it's not by taking away people's rights. I also urge that we reduce the special permit requirements for the 1 acre zones and larger, particularly with accessory structures in front yards and site disturbance thresholds. One of the things that I've come before this board for where my clients are, these guest houses or sport courts or things that are in a front yard. And, we meet the special permit criteria, and I'm not suggesting that you don't continue to approve these, but I think that your time is better spent dealing with stuff in town and dealing with the businesses and the changes of use and things like that. I just feel like, those kinds of things, if I remember correctly, didn't exist prior to 2007. I don't remember prior to 2007 having to come in for special permits for those kinds of accessory structures. Same thing with the 10,000 square foot disturbance limit threshold. I think that's a little low. Remember, New Canaan used to be a lot of farmland. And so the trees that we have now, a lot of them are newer. If you have a neighbor that tears down a lot of trees, yes, it's a travesty. But the drainage implications if somebody's got 6 acres and they take out an acre in the middle of their property, is that really something that the commission needs to look at? It's just a question. I think that there's better uses of time. If there's no impact on drainage, or if the drainage can be addressed somehow and staff can address that, if there's some way that that kind of a quote unquote violation can be addressed by staff, I think it's just a better use of time. And that was really all I had for tonight. But, once we get into the weeds, I'll have more comments, obviously.
Great.
Thank you.
Well, we'll be in the weeds in another 3 or 4 months.
Okay.
So come back.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will.
Sarah, I don't know.
We can open it up to those on Zoom if there's
Zoom,
anyone on Zoom. If you want to raise your hand, we can then call on you individually if anyone would like to speak. All right, I think I see Maurice.
Maurice.
Yes, yep. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, this is the first time for me on Zoom on my iMac. I usually do it on my phone. I wasn't sure if the mic was working at this end. I'm a designer, so my concern is about the design of the town. I live downtown, very close to the train station. My work is in the city. And so I'm a walker and a cyclist around town a lot. I do my shopping at Water Stewart's on my bicycle. And I either cycle very slowly or I walk. And I think of I think of it, you know, in some ways it's a very beautiful town, but there are aspects to it that trouble me. And my favorite street is Main Street north of Elm, where there are some buildings, 3-story buildings, I think dating from around 1910, that align, and they form what we call the building or the street wall, either the building wall or the street wall. And I think of streets as streets as rooms. And that particular block, just immediately north of Elm on Main, feels like a room. There are 3-story, very beautifully detailed 3-story brick buildings. The cornices don't quite align, but they're close. And you know, for me, that was the golden age of New Canaan architecture. And I just wondered if I did download a copy of I'm just looking at it, the Town of New Canaan Village District Design Guidelines, which apparently has not been updated since 2010, from what I can see. And I just wonder if going forward, you folks ever talk about that, just not just one building, but the effect of buildings forming a room or a wall. And I will be staying in touch and listening in. And so I think that's it for me tonight, but I will be around and keeping up. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else on Zoom? I'm not seeing any takers.
Okay.
Do we have anyone else in the audience that would like to speak tonight?
Yes, hi. I'm Terry Spring, and I did send you something for the record. And I think you're doing a great job. It's really important. None of us have really looked at the center of New Canaan. Cody Real Estate has been here for 100 years plus. I must say I'm not proud of that because it brings the old with the new, but the concern I have is that you really look at our central business district and it's becoming so congested. And I think that the parking will be helpful. The parking changes to me are important. We can all look at them and decide whether they're better or not. But the question is, who are they better for? Are they better for people driving up Elm Street? Are there people shopping on Main? And we have a large chunk of parking. And it's unfortunately my job mostly to figure out what's happening there. And it's interesting to find when you really look at it that I question, did you get my record that I sent? Because if I read it, I don't have to repeat it to everyone. Did
Yes,
my
we did
record?
get it.
Oh, okay. Okay. I think that whatever we can do to reduce congestion within the central business district is going to be very valuable to everyone. Whether you want to eat, shop, go to the library, park, anywhere, I don't know. But I think that would be very helpful if we could focus on the reality of the congestion in the center of town. Because people, do talk a lot about it. I have tenants who are always going back and forth about it. And I just hope that's a focus. But I'm going to keep quiet because I don't have any great ideas. And I'm relying on the others to have great ideas and the commission to have discretion to help us. But it should be a focus. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak tonight? Nope. Okay. Well,
Just thank everyone for our purposes. I thank you all for coming and hope you'll remain involved. And if you have other ideas, drop them in the comment box or put them in an email to Sarah. And also keep your eyes open for the survey will come out, and then the second workshop in the spring.
You may
So-
want to mention the website also and how to monitor and also to find the any written comments sent in. They're all posted on the website. Maybe Ms. Carey can speak about that so people
Yeah,
can
so,
keep up to date with what's happening.
We are updating the website. It's within the planning and zoning website. I believe it was included in the presentation. And if you have any questions about accessing it, you can reach out to me or anyone in my office and we can direct you to it. But we're trying to update the website anytime there is an update. So anytime we're having a new subcommittee meeting or there's a big milestone in the project, I'm trying to update that, and all of the public comment that gets submitted, I'm posting online. And so anything you send to me will include on the website, as well as any project updates. So documents that are important for the public to review. So that will be updated constantly.
And I think the First Selectman's monthly newsletter has been very good at sharing information. So that's another document to subscribe to, and there's always good information in that.
Just to add, this meeting is being recorded like all town meetings, and it will be posted on the town's YouTube page with all other town meetings.
great.
And our whole presentation tonight will be available. I know even these are great screens. It was a little bit hard to read certain things at a distance, so that'll all be online.
Great.
Full disclosure.
Thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.